cheers.
Dang, what was I thinking? Cheers, though. Cheers.
Welcome to How's Your Wine? This is episode 2, and I'm here with a very special guest, Janelle Rucker. She is Burger and Wines on Instagram. And Janelle, go ahead and tell the people more about yourself.
First off, very excited to be here. As Nelson mentioned, I am Burger and Wines on Instagram. Started a few years ago, just really exploring wine and everyday food pairing. So I wanted some wine with my Chick-fil-A. What do I do? And kind of grown from that into a kind of storytelling space. And so every February, I do Black Wine Story Month. I started 2 years ago. Telling the story of Black wine professionals. And then that's grown into a podcast, which just launched last month. So kind of going from the wine education and tasting space into the storytelling space.
That's awesome. So what were some of the challenges that you faced, like transitioning from the wine education to the storytelling to now like the podcast?
I would say figuring out what it is that I want to do and what will be most helpful in the industry. So when I first started doing the tasting stuff and the wine education, it really was just me having fun and sharing what I was doing as I was learning in the hopes that it would help other people. And that's fun, and it's still fun. I still do a little bit of that, but then kind of like, oh, I'm really into this. Like the vineyard part of it and the people behind the wine part of it. So really solidifying what that looks like, what role that looks like for me in the industry has been tough. And I think I go back and forth because the storytelling part is a little more difficult than just the have fun, take a picture of this wine and this food. And so especially going into the podcast, it's getting a little easier because I feel more comfortable there. It feels more like a contribution that I'm proud of. But it's still, as things change, as the industry grows, as I see what other people are doing that I really enjoy, that continues to kind of be a challenge to not get distracted and go do this other easy thing or the comfortable thing.
I hear you. So where are you from? Like, tell us more about your background and how you grew up and what got you into the wine space.
Yes, I'm originally from Northern Virginia, right outside of DC. And my background is in print journalism. So I worked for newspapers right out of college. I was in Ohio and Louisiana, and then I came back to Southern Virginia at a newspaper. And that's where I really started visiting vineyards and really getting interested about wine. My first love really was like local wine. So I've been slow to get into like the old world wines and kind of the big names everybody knows about, because what first hooked me was like local wines and the people that were making those wines. So if you know anything about Virginia wines, where are you from?
I'm from Texas, the Dallas area.
Okay. So in Virginia, Northern Virginia, Loudoun County is, I hope people don't get mad. To me, that's where like a lot of the quality wine really is produced in Virginia. And then in Southwestern Virginia, you find a lot of fruit wines. I mean, you find a lot of people making some other traditional varietals too, and when I say Southern, I mean like south of Charlottesville, because Charlottesville and around that, they're making a lot of really good wines. But once you get a little south of Charlottesville, it's like the jalapeno wines and the blueberry wine and like all of that type of stuff. So, but I got interested in the process, and I've always been interested in farming. I covered a lot of rural areas. I think farmers of any type are like magicians and scientists. Like, to do what they do year after year, produce for us, is amazing. So that's where I really got into wine. And then I left newspapers, moved back up to Northern Virginia. And that's when I really got into like Loudoun, a little bit of Maryland wines, and really got to taste better wines and start learning more about the traditional like varieties and really expanded my palate. And that's also where I met a ton of like awesome people. The DC wine industry people are great, and they've all helped me continue to learn and network. And so they were really the basis of why I started Black Wine Story Month, because I was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of Black people doing this thing. Like, we need to put this out there. So yeah, so I've literally since then just continued to develop my palate, going to industry events, drinking as much wine as I can. I took my WSET last year, level 2, and I'll probably do level 3 later this year. But I really want to keep learning and expanding my palette so I can become a better storyteller in the space.
So talk about that journalism background and how you've been able to really hone in on that, even though you're not in the newspaper world anymore.
So really everything that I learned there, from not being worried about asking people for an interview to knowing how to interview people, I heavily rely on all of those things. Even in my social media presence, like being able to tell a story in whatever you do, being able to amplify stories, all of that came from my background in journalism. And so when I left journalism, I went to marketing and comms. So it's not really that big of a jump. It's a lot of the same stuff. It's kind of doing the same kind of basically journalism for a brand. And so, yeah, a lot of that stuff, a lot of that skill set transfers seamlessly to this. And then also with journalism, you were covering different things every day, and you have to become an expert in something like this. And so that really helped me when I first started getting into wines, because I know how to research, I know how to immerse myself into something and really learn about it to be able to then explain it or share it with other people.
That's real. And with you being a Black woman and going through like the whole journalism climb, talk about the difficulties that you had in that aspect. And then, you're starting 2 big movements with Wine and Women, which I saw on Instagram, and also the Black Wine Story Month.
So it's interesting. I've always been the minority in any newsroom that I was in. And then on top of that, I was in Chillicothe, Ohio, where there might have been 4 Black people. And then, and I was covering rural areas there. And when I moved to Louisiana, it was the same thing. I was covering rural areas. So I've always been a minority in those spaces. And then I was always covering older white men who were calling me sweetheart or girl or whatever the case may be. And so I understand that in those spaces, it's very hard to be seen as a valuable contributor to those spaces. And I think it's, a lot of people don't like to do the work to figure something out about somebody. And so I think that really drives what I do with like Wine Needs Women and with Black Wine Stories, is like, okay, I'm gonna make it easy for you then. I'm going to put these stories in your face. You're already scrolling here through Instagram, or you're already on your podcast platform. So here are these dope people that I've come across just by being in the space that you might overlook if you were in the same space with them. But here you go. And I think a lot of things, like not to like dive into politics, but where we are as a country is a lack of understanding of each other. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of research around that and how stories help build empathy and really help us understand each other to be able to work together towards a common goal. So that really drives a lot of my work too. But yeah, that being the only one in a space, and even talking to a lot of Black wine professionals, the stories you hear are crazy. It's crazy.
That's so tough, especially as you mentioned, like the political space that we're in right now, and all the challenges that women have to overcome already on a daily basis. And you've been able to really climb that mountain in newspaper, in journalism, and now in wine. Like, how have you been able to hear and listen to other women talk about their stories in their respective industries? And, what are some of the, I guess, the commonalities that you're hearing amongst other ladies?
So I was raised by a single mother, and I know that we can do all things. And so I took that with me into work. And so I'm always like, oh no, you're gonna like me. Like, I'm awesome. Get to know me. And I'm here for us to like work together. I'm not here to get you. I'm not here to whatever. Let's work together and do whatever it is we're trying to do. So that has always worked well for me at work, which some people might think is problematic, just always trying to be like it. But that has always worked for me in work. And I think that a lot of the women that I've talked to in both in food and wine and like hospitality, it's just, it always feels like a competition when it doesn't need to be. Like some people get very offended by strong women when it's not that strong woman is trying to come after you. She's just
Right.
trying to do her job, or she's just trying to do what she enjoys. And I've
Facts.
heard a lot of stories about, it just being tired because you just want to do your job or do what you enjoy. You're not out here trying to be a threat to anybody and people see you as a threat. Um, and the whole women being a Black woman, you have to deal with the misogyny and like the racism. And so that is also like doubly exhausting and hard. Then the fact that they continue to push through and to make their way in the space, but like they have a passion for it and a talent for it. And it's just really unfortunate that people have to go through that just to do something that they enjoy.
And I'm really in awe and like all the power that you all show, like to be able to grind through everything that's going on. And you have to really give yourself a pat on the back because like every day is so challenging and can be toxic, and being able to again power through and really challenge each other to be better. You got to give yourself a big pat on the back. So real respect there.
Thank you. And it's not just challenging each other to be better too, but also supporting each other when there are setbacks or when maybe you didn't do so great, or just having like that support as well is invaluable. Because everything doesn't go great all the time. And we're not saying we're superhuman. We mess up, we might make some mistakes. So being able to have that experience to mess up, but to still keep pushing is very important.
So you talk about amplifying others. Like, who do you go to when you need someone to amplify yourself?
You know what? I think that it is my background as a journalist. You might be the third or fourth kind of like podcast interview situation where like I'm not the interviewer that I've done over the past like 5 or 6 years. Um, I I'm just more comfortable being the person asking the question than getting asked the question. So I'm very much, and I'm like this at work too. I put my head down and I do the work. And if somebody wants to come and have a conversation about it, I'm more than happy to do it. So I'm not the greatest, which I know I have to get better, especially with the podcast and going out and like looking for someone to amplify me. But I'm a true believer in if you do good work for pure reasons, people see and they amplify that naturally. And that's how most of my opportunities have come along.
That's dope. So for you, how have you personally grown in this space? You talked about, I saw you had the podcast going up. How have you grown in the wine space over the last, 3 to 5 years?
I will say, so first of all, the wine education, like the certs, I hated school. I didn't like taking tests. I was good at taking tests, but I'm like, I'm not a studier. I'm not a whatever. And so doing WSET was like, that's when it really went from being a good time and being curious to being like, oh no, like
Really?
this. Yeah, I got to study and I did it virtually. Those classes were like 3 hours long once a week over like 5 weeks. And it was it was nuts. But I'm so thankful for that experience because there are things that I knew about the wine industry and about wine and how it's made, and it helped me realize how much I did not know.
Mm.
So that helped shape how I've moved since then and the opportunities that I look for to learn since then. So I would say I've grown and taken it more serious from being just kind of like a curious consumer to being a more serious contributor. Um, and then just from the wine perspective, like I started off drinking like Riesling and some of the sweeter stuff. It was never like a Moscato or anything, but like the Rieslings of the world. And then when I got into Virginia wine, it was still light, like table wines.
Hmm.
Um, And then I moved on to like Malbec. That was like my entrance into red wine. And now, especially since taking WSET, I can appreciate tasting everything, knowing that I don't have to enjoy it, but being able to understand that it's a good representation of whatever it's supposed to be or not. And so like right now, like I feel like a lot of people are, like I'm obsessed with champagnes, like small producers from
Okay.
Champagne. Yeah, but I also I love interesting rosés, like not really the grocery store rosés, but the ones that are like from weird places, made with like grapes that you don't really think of normally when you think about rosés. And then like I'm obsessed with Zinfandels too.
Zinfandel.
Yeah, which I'll tell you an embarrassing story.
Let's hear it.
Uh, I, which really to me speaks to like how I grow. I went to Napa early, before Burger and Wines actually. I'd gone to Napa to visit. I went to California to visit a friend, then we went to Napa for the weekend. And back then all I knew about was white Zinfandel. And I knew I didn't like white Zinfandel. That's what they sold in the clubs. So I was like, I'm not drinking white Zinfandel. We went to like a small winery in Napa, and the guy was like, "Okay, now we have like our Zinfandel to taste." And I like covered my glass, and I was like, "No, thank you." like, no, I don't like Zinfandel. And it's like, I don't know, that man saw through me. He was like, "If you could just do me a favor and taste it." Like he's like, "You don't have to drink like a full glass, but just taste it. I think it might be different than what you're thinking." And we have they had old vines in. He's like, "It might be different." When I tasted it, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is delicious." And so when I went back to realize like what I was thinking and making the connection, I was like, "Good Lord." Like that was terrible. That was terrible. But that kind of shows the value of
Mhm.
understanding why, even on a more basic level, just kind of the more traditional varieties and stuff. So when you go out, you know what it is being offered to
Right.
you.
That's awesome. And I can't believe I missed this to start the show, but you mentioned your IG handle, Burger and Wine. Why Burger and Wine?
Um, so as I mentioned, by the time I started Burger and Wines, I was in marketing and comms. And so I'm big about the way things look and things being clever and things that I can do to make things an easy sell. So I was trying to figure out, I knew I wanted fast food. At that point, I was very tunnel vision on like fast food and wine. So I was like, what are we thinking? Like, what could it be? I was like, oh, I was with a friend and we like bouncing ideas off. And we were like, burger and fries. And they were like, oh, burger and wine. It's like that could be like a little play on that or whatever. But it's funny because I don't eat that much. But I like it. That's cute. Like to me, that
Yeah,
denotes kind of like the fast food, the non-traditional wine thing. So we're gonna go with burger and wine as a play on burger and fries.
that's dope though. That's clever. So now that we talked about Burger and Wines, your IG handle, I asked my first guest, Will Uncourt, what his favorite varietal was. So you mentioned a couple minutes ago. What varietal most describes who you are as a person?
Let me think. Because it really like it changes with the wind. Like it can change all the time. Like sometimes, like I said, I'm like, oh, I'm like on this champagne kick, and then other times I'm like, oh. So I will say, halfway cheating. Right now, I'm gonna say Lambrusco.
Lambusto.
For now, at this certain snapshot and point in my life and wine path, I'm
And why
gonna
is
say
that?
Lambrusco is one of those things that in America it's kind of rare. A good Lambrusco. It's hard to find a really good Lambrusco, and when you find one, it's like this is amazing, and you get kind of obsessed with it. And I really hope that that's what people do with Black wine stories. But also, I like that it's like kind of rare um, in the American wine space. I'll keep stressing that because I've got a friend from Italy who every time he goes home brings back Lambruscos that were like $10, and you
Ooh.
have to pay much more
Right.
for that for a Lambrusco in America. But Lambrusco in the American space, it feels like not a unicorn, but just something out of the ordinary that people aren't really used to seeing. But if they give it a chance, like
It's fire like
really,
that.
yeah, it's good.
All right, I gotta add that to the list. I gotta add
Yeah.
that to the list for sure. So now you mentioned your favorite varietal, your IG handles at Burger and Wines. So what burger most represents who you are as a person?
I'm gonna say just a simple burger with some bacon on it and like some barbecue sauce. It's like me because it's kind of like just regular. My sister calls me grandma. It's kind of like low key and regular, but then like kind of that bacon and barbecue sauce kind of like takes it up like a half step. So you
Mm,
get surprised sometimes.
mm.
I think I'm gonna go with that. Though I will say a lamb burger also is my favorite and a favorite to pair with wines.
A lamb burger?
Hmm.
I don't know if we had that in Texas. I ain't never had no lamb burger before.
Really?
I've never had a
Y'all
lamb.
wouldn't. Y'all are big on like the beef and stuff down
Oh yeah, we have to have beef. I've
there.
been
Yeah.
I've been big on turkey burgers because I am trying to like slim up.
Okay.
It's like the Beyond Meat. I think it's the brand that I go with. But lamb burger. I haven't tried a lamb burger before.
If you can find, I don't know if y'all have them down there, but if you can find a good Mediterranean restaurant,
Okay.
because you want like good lamb and then you want them to like cook it well, it's good. Even better if they've got like Greek wine on the menu.
See, even my guy Willem Cork mentioned Greek wine, like that's the go-to right now. Greek wines are hidden. So
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
Lambrusco and Greek wines, that's on the bucket list now. So you mentioned that you got your WSET 2, you're looking to get your WSET 3. For you, like what was the process from going from 1 to 2? How long did that take? And then now from 2 to 3, you're giving yourself like a year, I believe. So describe that process.
So I actually didn't do level one.
What?
Um, no, so and again, the DC wine crew, like those are my folks. But Sarita actually from Vine Me Up, and they do the Swirl Suite podcast. I was asking her about it because this is actually going back to your question about challenges. This
Mm,
also is a continuing challenge for me about figuring out how much do I know and trusting what I know and what else I still need to go and get like a cert for. And
definitely.
she was like, you do not need to do level one. And she was like, you know enough for like level one. And level one isn't a prerequisite for level two.
Right.
Two is for three, but you don't need one to do two. So I was like, well, let me save my coins and not do level one. Let me just go straight to level two. And I got thankfully a scholarship to do my level two. Um, and so it, like I said, I was surprised at how much work it was because then also like it kind of blew my head. I was like, Sarita said, I need to take one. So I'm gonna go in here. I probably already know half of this too. And it was like, no, you don't. Like, no, you don't. Be on these calls, on these classes, and get this education. And so it really took a lot out of me, which is why I waited. And actually, I only recently decided that I was going to do level three because I was like, well, I'm doing level two. I'm not trying to be anybody's som. I'm more than likely not going to work at a winery or a restaurant in wine.
Mhm.
And so, do I really need to like go further with the certifications? Like, or can I just keep learning on my own? So, I just recently, earlier this year, was like, no, I really want to get into wine writing, like for publications. So kind of going back to journalism, but I feel like I need a little bit more of the education, the traditional education piece. So I decided I would do level three. Um, I don't know that I'll go past level three, but I also didn't think I was going to go past level two. So I guess we'll see how much level three takes out of me.
Well, best of luck going forward with that certification for level 3. You're gonna do big things with it. So we're excited to see where that takes you.
Thank you.
Um, you kind of mentioned some goals for you, but as far as like dreams go in the wine industry, what's your 5-year plan for yourself moving forward?
Definitely growing the Black Wine Stories podcast, and continuing to do Black Wine Story Month in February. Hopefully, like, I'm always scouring Instagram and everywhere to find new um, Black wine professionals to Amplify. So I just really want to build that up much bigger and continue doing that over the next few years. And then I really want to get, like I said, into writing. I want to cover the wine industry for publications. So luckily, I just got a Roots Fund scholarship. So I'm a Roots Fund scholar, and so I'm going to get a mentor in that space, which is going to be great because even though I worked at newspapers and things, it's hard for me to figure out pitching and like where it should go and like what type of like things people are looking for. I know what type of things I want to write about, but I know I need to like shape that into something that publications are going to be interested in. And so really over the next few years too, I'm going to be looking to grow that skill set and just get published a lot more.
I can't wait to see your work. It's going to be pretty dope based off the conversation, and all your content that you make is amazing. My last question for you is, again, just to go back on the fact that, you know, we're trying to uplift all the women voices out in the space. You know, obviously we're focused on Black women, but really all the women out there who are looking to grow in this field and just in general. What's your message overall to them as we continue to evolve through 2022 and hopefully, you know, better days to come across the world?
I mean, just keep going. The industry needs our talent and our voice. And it may not feel like it sometimes, but things are changing. We've been loud for long enough, and I think people are starting to listen, and the industry is starting to diversify, even if it's not as fast as we would like. So just keep going, don't get discouraged, and reach out to other women and men in wine if you need support or help. I think the only way we're going to keep doing this and make sure that everybody is okay is taking care of each other and doing this together.
That's amazing. And on that note, thank you, Janelle. Again, tell them your Instagram and where they can find you elsewhere across social media.
So Instagram, I am Burger and Wines, plural. And then the Black Wine Story podcast is also on Instagram, and it's at Black Wine Stories. And then you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then also YouTube. So right now, through the rest of the year, we're dropping new interviews monthly. And then in 2023, we'll pick up the pace a little bit.
Let's get it. I see you. Make sure, again, you heard what she said. Go follow her on the gram, on YouTube. Go listen to her on Spotify and Apple. So anywhere you guys can support her and all the women out there across the wine industry, do it. So again, cheers.
Yes, dang, what was I thinking? Cheers, though. Cheers.
Y'all take it easy, and thanks for following. Go ahead and subscribe at How's Your Wine on Instagram and on YouTube. Y'all take it easy. All right.